Assistant Professor of English, the Burmese College of Commerce and Arts, Mysuru. I'm going to teach you the Afternoon English BA first year. Today I'm discussing William Wordsworth poem, The Solitary Reaper. The Solitary Reaper, written by William Wordsworth. So I give the brief introduction about the author William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth was born on April 7th, 1770 in Cockermouth, Cumberland, England. So young William's parents, Jan and Anne, died during his boyhood, raised amid the mountains of Cumberland alongside the river Derwent. Wordsworth grew up in a rustic society and spent a great deal of his time playing outdoors in what he would later remember as a pure communion with nature. In the early 1970s, William Wordsworth lived for a time in France, then in the grip of the violent revolution. Wordsworth's philosophical sympathies lay with the revolutionaries, but his loyalties lay with England, whose monarchy he was not prepared to see overthrown. While in France, Wordsworth had a long affair with Annette Wellan, with whom he had a daughter, Caroline. A later journey to France to meet Caroline, now a young girl, would inspire the Great Sonnet. It's a beauteous evening, calm and free. So Wordsworth's monumental poetic legacy rests in a large number of important poems, varying in length and weight from the short, simple lyrics of 1790s to the vast expenses of the prelude. 13 books long in its 1808 edition, but the themes that run through Wordsworth poetry and the language and imagery he uses to embody those themes remain remarkably consistent throughout the Wordsworth canon. Adhering largely to the tenets Wordsworth set out for himself in 1802, Preface to Lyrical Ballads. Preface to Lyrical Ballads, published in 1802. Here, Wordsworth argues that poetry should be written in the natural language of common speech rather than in the lofty and elaborate dictions that were then considered poetic. He argues that poetry should offer access to the emotions contained in memory, and he argues that the first principle of poetry should be pleasure, that the chief duty of poetry is to provide pleasure through a rhythmic and beautiful expression of feeling for all human sympathy. He claims is based on a subtle pleasure principle that is the naked and native dignity of man. So, And Wordsworth and Coleridge made their task in write the simple language of common people, telling concrete stories of their lives. So, according to the theory, poetry is originated emotions are recollected in state of tranquility. And poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings which recollected in tranquility. Next, Wordsworth was a self-centered man. He loved solitude. He lived to the end of simple, unassuming life, indifferent to wealth and vulgar ambition. In the words of Carlyle, he had a fine, wholesome rusticity about him, fresh as his own mountain breeze. Absolute sincerity was the keynote of his character and the motto. Plain living and high thinking, which he taught the world, was also the governing principles of his own life. Wordsworth is commonly known as a poet of nature, and he is called him as a high priest of nature. But we should not take these attributes in a narrow sense. Wordsworth is a poet of nature in a distinctive sense, and before discussing him as a romantic poet or a poet of nature, let us cast a cursory glance at the preceding age. Preceding age. The Romantical Revival came as a sharp contrast to the neoclassical poetry. Its undisputed leaders were Wordsworth and Coleridge, followed by Shelley, Keats, and Byron. All these romantics believed in the supremacy of imagination, which voices itself in poetry. They also believed in the spiritual unity of the world, which is accessible only through imagination. These poets had faith in the innate goodness and dignity of man. They considered feelings and emotions as useful guides in life. In in this background, that you as student of literature must study Wordsworth for a deeper understanding of this poem this poem. So, the Solitary Reaper is one of the Wordsworth most famous poem. In the autumn of 1803, Wordsworth went on a tour to Scotland at the time of autumn season. At 1803, Wordsworth moved to a tour to Scotland. He produced some of his beautiful poems during that period at the time of tour in Scotland. The Solitary Reaper is one of them. So let us now I read the poem, The Solitary Reaper. The Solitary Reaper, behold her single in the field, yon solitary island, alas, reaping and singing by herself, stop here or gently pass. Alone she cuts and binds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. Who listen for the wail profound is overflowing with the sound. No nightingale did overchant more welcome notes to weary bands of travelers in some shady haunt among Arabian sands. A voice so thrilling never was heard in springtime from the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest brides. Will no one tell me what she sings? Perhaps the plaintive members flow, plaintive numbers flow, for old unhappy far of things, and battles long ago, or is it some more humble lane? Familiar matter of today, some natural sorrow, loss, or pain that has been and may be again. So, whatever the theme, the maiden sang as if her song could have no ending, as could start, as her song could have no ending. So, I saw her singing at her work, and over the sickle bending, I listened motionless and still. And as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart bore long after it was heard no more. After it was heard no more. So, in these first 8 lines of the poem, so the poet sees a island girl in the field, island girl in the field. She is all alone. She is reaping and singing. The poet hears the fascinating song sung by her. He asks the passers by to stand and listen or to pass gently without disturbing the girl. She is reaping the harvest and binding the sheaves alone. The whole valley is filled and seems to overflow with her song. So it's a dream like situation, human figure seen in a country background. Solitude becomes more fascinating when set against a musical background. The poet's arts filled with the sangas is the valley. Sangas is the valley. In the stanza second, line 9 to 16, Wordsworth compares the girl's song of a nightingale and cuckoo. When the tired travelers reach a shady place after crossing hot and vast Arabian desert and listen to a nightingale song, it sounds blissfully sweet. Even the song sung by a cuckoo in spring is very sweet. Its thrilling melody breaks the silence of the Hebrides. Hebrides means a group of islands of the west coast of Scotland. But the solitary reaper song surpasses both the nightingale and the cuckoo's sweetness. Cuckoo's sweetness. So thus in this stanza two comparisons are suggested, one with a nightingale and another with a cuckoo. But the poet finds the song of the solitary reaper sweeter than songs of the both the birds, nightingale and a cuckoo. In the third stanza, lines 17 to 34, shows that the poet wondering about the subject of the song because the girl is singing in a Gaelic, he cannot understand the meaning of the song. He guesses that perhaps the girl is singing about some sad or tragic incident which happened in the past. It could also be about battles fought long ago. It may also be an humble song concerning some matter of everyday life. Or the song could be about some misfortune or some loss or pain, so caused by nature in the past or which might be caused. In the last stanza of the poem, the poet explains the effect of experience, the subject and the language of the song do not matter. It appears to the poet that she will go on singing forever. The girl was still singing. The poet watched her as she bent over the sickle and continued to sing. He stood motionless even while the song was going on. The poet went up the hill, but the melody of the song delighted this heart even when he could no longer hear the song. In the daffodils, two words recollect the entire scene long after he had actually seen it. Yes, the poet emphasizes the role of senses in poetic creation. Memory plays a major role in both the poems. An experience of past may become continuous source of pleasure for a sensitive soul. For a sensitive soul. So in this poem, the poet orders his listener to behold a solitary island lass, reaping and singing herself in a field. He says that anyone passing by should either stop here or gently pass as so as not to disturb her. As she cuts and binds the grain, she sings a melancholy strain, and the valley overflows with the beautiful sad sound. The speaker says that the sound is more welcome than any chant of the nightingale to weary travelers in the desert, and that the cuckoo bird in spring never sang with a voice so thrilling. Voice so thrilling. So important, the poet asks, will no one tell me what she sings? So he speculates that her song might be about old unhappy far of things and battles long ago, or that it might be humbler, a simple song about a matter of today. Whatever she sings about, he says, he listened motionless and still, and he traveled up the hill. He carried her song with him in his heart long after he could no longer hear it. So, along with I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, The Solitary Reaper is one of Wordsworth's most famous post lyrical ballad lyrics. In Tintern, Wordsworth said that he was able to look on nature and hear human music in this poem. He writes specifically about real human music encountered in beloved rustic setting. The song of the young girl reaping in the fields is incomprehensible to him, incomprehensible to him, and what he appreciates is its tone, its expressive beauty, and the mood it creates within him, rather than its explicit content, at which he can only guess to an extent. Then the poem ponders the limitations of language as it does the third stanza. Will no one tell me what she sings? But what is really does is praise the beauty of music and its fluid, expressive beauty, the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling that Wordsworth identified as the art of poetry. By placing this praise and this beauty in a rustic natural setting, and by establishing as its source a simple rustic girl, Wordsworth acts on the values of lyrical ballads. The poem structure is simple. The first stanza, the sea, the second offers two bird companions for the music. The third wonders about the content of the song. And the fourth describes the effect of the songs on the speaker. So its language is natural and unforced. Additionally, the final two lines of poem, it's music in my heart, I bore long. I bore long. Unforced. Additionally, the final two lines of the poem, it's music my heart, I bore long after it was heard no more. So return its focus to the familiar theme of memory and the soothing effect of beautiful memories on human thoughts and feelings. Human thoughts and feelings. The solitary reaper anticipates Keats' two great meditations on art, the Ode to a Nightingale, in which the speaker steeps himself in the music of a bird in the forest. Wordsworth even compares the reaper to a nightingale and ode on a Grecian urn, in which the speaker is unable to ascertain the stories behind the shapes on an urn. It also anticipates Keats' ode to autumn with the figure of an emblematic girl reaping in the fields. So Wordsworth preface to the lyrical ballads in 1802 argues that poetic contains natural delineation, human passions, characters, and human incidents. It ought not to be judged by the presence of artificial poetic diction. Rather, the language of conversation in the middle and lower classes of society can be medium, so the solitary reaper exemplifies these beliefs. So, it describes the nameless listener's delight in a young woman's melancholy song. An unknown language is working by herself in a Scottish valley. She sings a sickle reaping. She sings a sickle reaping. And repeating, raping grain, 4 8 line stanzas, each closing with two couples and will written in octosyllabic lines. Have a musical lilt. Short lines deliver the rhymes as a quick pace. Sentences normally need two or more such short lines so that few lines are strongly and end stopped. Most freely enjoined diction is conversational. So Wordsworth writes plain, almost undemanding verse. For example, he repeats the simplest idea in varying words. The girl is single, solitary, and by herself. She is reaping, so cuts and binds the grain, motionless and still. So this excludes only what never prosaic, even the chalky. Wordsworth notes pointedly that the last lines comes verbatim from a prose travel book. The solitary reaper does not implement programmatically his dogma of plain diction. For example, well propound plaintive numbers and number lay or semi-formulate catchphrases in the very 18th century verse whose artificially he rejects. So these exceptions may be deliberate, characterizing the speaker, and that someone whom poetry means. He resorts to formulas as if to him hint that girls sing out a place in the valley, however, separated from the traditions of fine verse work where class, occupation, and location. Wordsworth deliberately impoverish his speaker's language so as to contrast with reaper. Contrast with reaper. So, and then the theme of the poem is the soothing power of music and the bliss of solitude. The poet is enchanted by melody of the song, even though he does not understand the language in which it is sung. Second is the girl is singing the song when she is all by herself. The poet is able to enjoy in solitude and there is no disturbances from the passers-by. So this poem is also its own movement, but the movement here is more complex. The poem moves both in space and time. Starting from the valley, the poet moves to the distant Arabian sands. The farthest Hebrides in the third stanza, it is movement in time beginning from the old NRPA far of things and battles of the past to familiar matter of today, including sorrow, loss or pain that has already been, maybe again in future. Another important point that deserves notice is that though the girl is singing a melancholy strain, it has a soothing and everlasting effect on the poet. This reminds us of Shelley, another important romantic poet who wrote in his Skylark, our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thoughts. The poet does not know what the song is about by its melancholy note fascinates and is carried away by it. Carried away by it. Similarly, no one knows what the nightingale and cuckoo sing about, but every day is enchanted by their sweet melody. This suggests the mystery of life, which is fascinated by their sweet melody. And this suggests the mystery of the which is fascinating. It is also which is also noted that there that Wordsworth looks at the world in its totally when he compares the girl to a nightingale and cuckoo. He also emphasizes the bliss of solitude. In fact, the word solitary in the little strikes the keynote of the poem. Solitude is so lovely. Verbal music. Verbal music. It is about the poem Solitary Reaper, written by William Wordsworth. So next, I am going to teach you another poem of William Wordsworth. The word is too much with us. The word is too much with us. Now I am going to teach you the another poem of William Wordsworth. The word is too much with us. So in the Romantic period was the lyrical poetry that dominated the literary scene, but the ages also saw the revival of some literary forms which have been in disuse after the Elizabethan age. The sonnet was such form. The word is too much with us is one of the most popular sonnets of Wordsworth. Now let us read the sonnets of the word is too much with us. The word is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away a sordid boon. This seed that bears her bosom to the moon. The winds that will be howling at all hours. The winds that will be howling at all hours. And are up gathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything we are out of tune. It moves us not, great God. I would rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. So might I standing on this pleasantly have glimpses that would make me less forlorn, have sight of porches rising from the sea. Oh, our ear, old Triton, blow his wretched arm. Wretched arm. So Wordsworth is sad at the growing materialism of the age. He protests against it and pleads with the world to restore its relationship with nature and enjoy its glory. In fact, it was in the last quarter of the 18th century that steam engine was invented and the British Empire was established in India by Warren Hastings. Adam Smith reflected the general spirit of the age of his wealth of the nations. During this period, man became completely detached from nature and pursued the course of materialistic comforts. Wordsworth found it harmful for the spiritual health of man. He wrote this sonnet as a warning to the world against such a pursuit. So, in this first stanza, line 1 to 4, the poem begins with a keen observation of the poet. The poet stated that the world is too much with us. We are too much concerned with the material pleasures of the world at all hours of the day. We are engaged in earning and spending money. We waste our energy and time in these. mundane things of life. We hardly realize that we are waste our energy and time in these mundane things of life and ignoring our higher nature and really significant things of life. Nature here means human nature, which Wordsworth believed was essentially good. We have abandoned our true selves in our greed of materialistic prosperity, which was Wordsworth is sordid boon. It is only through art that man can pursue the beauty of nature and maintain the eternal bond between himself and nature. But man has paid a heavy price in the bargain. He has completely alienated himself from nature. Hence, though Wordsworth calls the worldly comforts a boon, he adds the adjective sordid, which points to the poet's frustration. In the lines 5 to 8, in the second stanza, there is before the lies before us vast. It describes the external nature. There lies before us the vast sea, unraveling her beautiful bosom to the moon. It's a memorable sight of human art. Then there is the cool breeze of nature, which ows as well as sleeps like flowers. But all these lovely sights evoke no response in him. Man has gone out of tune with them in his greed for money. He has no time to enjoy and appreciate the beautiful treasure of nature. Wordsworth here bemoans the pathetic state man has degenerated into. As already mentioned, Wordsworth viewed man and nature as complementary to each other. They were two essential elements for the unity and harmony of the universe. The spiritual unity of the world, believed Wordsworth, depended upon the harmony between man and nature. So, in the last stanza, line 9 to 14, the exclamation, Great God, in the middle of the first line of the sestet marks a change in the poet's thoughts. He wishes to be a pagan rather than live in a world which has degenerated into materialism. This suggests the deep felt sorrow of the poet since he knew that paganism was an outward religion. It was a religion practiced by the ancient Greeks and Romans who were called healthy and heathen and Christians. Heathen means the nation or community which worshipped not the true God but the prohibited aspects of nature. Had Wordsworth been a pagan, he would have had visions in response to the various sights and sounds of nature. For example, standing on the shore of the boundless sea, you would have seen Proteus, the sea god rising from its ever changing waves. In Greek and Roman mythology, Proteus is a sea god, the son of Oceanus and Tethys. So he is believed to assume various shapes. Wordsworth further imagines that you would have heard Titan, another sea deity, and the son of Poseidon and Amperite. So blowing his shell trumpet on the winds across the sea, thus you would have felt less sad and less forlorn than what he feels today after looking at the world which revolves wound money. Revolves wound money. So Wordsworth here suggests that beliefs in an outworn, uncivilized religion which takes man near to nature is preferable to being alienated from it. But such a recourse is suggested only as an alternative and not a necessity. In order to maintain harmony between man and nature, the poem can be viewed as an impassioned plea to maintain the spiritual unity of the world and to rejuvenate man's aesthetic sense. In the octave, Wordsworth described the state of affairs in the contemporary world. He emphasizes man's degraded state. The sestet marks a change in the emotional progress of the poetic thought. He comes upon a solution. He prefers to be a pagan and enjoy visions of the Ethan world rather than allow to degeneration. Allow to degeneration. As already mentioned, the sonnet is based on the Petrarchan model, first octave, 8 lines, and the last 6 lines called a sestet. So the slight variation from the usual scheme of this kind of sonnet, kind of sonnet. The world is too much with us is one of the shorter pieces of Wordsworth, which are first rate excellence. The sonnet shows Wordsworth's remarkable merit as a sonneteer. The sonnet is also a good example of Wordsworth's meditative poetry. According to Melvin Rader, within its brief compass, it implies a judgment upon the quality of modern civilization, its poverty of imagination, the stuffiness of its creeds, the rush and push of its public life. We are invited to live in harmony with nature and to renounce the fretful, still unprofitable, and the fever of the world. In the richness of its values and the range of its ideas, this is a large poem, although numbers only 14 lines, but it's what Matthew Arnold called a criticism of life. The sonnet reveals Wordsworth's love for quiet scenes of nature. The poet presents two beautiful pictures of nature. One is the picture of the sea bathed in moonlight. The other is the picture of the winds that steep like flowers at night. Let us read the following lines to enjoy these pictures. The sea that bares her bosom to the moon, the sea that bares her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, the winds that will be howling at all hours, that are up gathered now like sleeping flowers, that are up gathered now like sleeping flowers. So the sonnet is thoroughly representative of Wordsworth's poetic genius. The style is at once concise as well dignified. So it is about the brief introduction and summary of the poem. The word is too much with us, written by William Wordsworth. Tomorrow we are discussing some other poems in the next classes. Okay, bye. See you.